Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Resources and Transformation Overview and Scrutiny Panel. I am Councillor Alan O'Sullivan, Chairman of the panel. Please note that this meeting is being broadcast live on the Council's website and on YouTube. It will remain available for the minimum of 12 months. Please switch any mobile device to a silent setting for the duration of the meeting. If the fire alarm rings, please use the nearest fire exit and go to the fire assembly point in the car park. For the benefit of those watching the meeting online, please would members introduce themselves during the meeting, if not already introduced by name. Is there any apologies?
One apology from Councillor England, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 1 on the agenda is the minutes. Members, can we please approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of May and the 24th of March? Agreed? Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations? No. Item 3, no public participation. Item 4, can you please note the panel's terms of reference as on your agenda, as set out on that agenda you've got there. Right, we move on to item 5, which is the annual performance provisional output, which I believe, Becky.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'll just do a very brief introduction. So the report sets out the annual performance report detailing delivery against the corporate plan commitments and the outturn position of the revenue and capital budgets for the general fund and for the housing revenue account. So two main elements of the report. So Appendix 1 covers the annual performance and Appendix 2 on are the outturn position statements. So it's just worth mentioning that it's a backward-looking report, so there's no forward-looking element in this report, which there would have been in the past, because this year the focus will be on developing the new corporate plan. So I don't intend to go into the report in too much detail, but I'd like to draw out some elements of performance relevant to this particular panel, and then I'll hand over to Alan to cover the outturn position. If there are questions that aren't relevant to this panel, as much as we're happy to hear those questions, the relevant officers may not be in the room to answer them. So, please feel free to message us after the meeting and ask some of those questions. So in terms of resources and transformation panel, so the Council received £1 million through the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and an additional £540,000 as part of the Rural Development Programme to support delivery of the 3 investment priorities of community in place, supporting local business and people in skills. The Resident Insights Survey saw 78% of respondents say they were satisfied with how NFDC is run, although further work is needed to understand some of the areas of concern, including cost of living and the climate. The staff survey saw a response rate of 41%, with more detailed analysis now being undertaken to better understand some of the results. And of the 177 staff vacancies, 82% were filled first time, which is up slightly on last year's position, and that's the average over the year in its entirety. The Platinum Jubilee Business Park has been completed and commercial investments within the district now stand at a value of 29 million. Cost of living support has been significant during the year, and this has included the distribution of food vouchers to over 8,000 households and over 8 million in energy rebate support to our residents. And additionally, funding of 17,000 has been given to 22 organisations for the provision of warm spaces. And finally, for me, the ICT teams continue to support the modernisation of our digital systems, including the introduction of a new housing system, and ongoing work to modernise the planning and regulatory systems, and the introduction of a new operations system. I'll hand over to Alan, then happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you. So just going to draw out some of the detail in terms of the financials within the report. So just to be clear, this details the provisional outturn for year ended 31st of March 2023. Follows the setting of the original budget way back in February 2022. And as Becky mentioned, the report covers the outturn positions for both the general fund and the housing revenue account and the capital programme for each. The report follows 3 previous monitoring reports and now includes the details behind the year-end variations that have not previously been reported. In summary, it was a difficult start to the financial year last year. We had significant cost pressures facing both accounts in terms of utilities, fuel, and a staff pay award that was beyond what we'd originally budgeted. The housing revenue account also faced significant pressures in terms of maintenance, spend and requirements. So we sought to take proactive measures in terms of bringing the spend back in line with the original budgets, and for the general fund certainly achieved this. The report shows that the outturn at portfolio level was just £56,000 different to the original budget. Ultimately, additional interest earnings also countered a shortfall in business rate income, which resulted in a position where no transfer was needed from unallocated reserves to balance the general fund last year. The outturn position for the housing revenue account was a little less favourable. We ended up with an outturn variation of 1.184 million, and this was covered by the development and acquisition reserve at year end. In terms of capital, we saw a strong delivery of the capital programme last year. We had additional approved projects added to the general fund programme and spent just in excess of 21.5 million, and HRA spend came in at just over 22 million. This was just a little less than 3 million below the original budget, so strong performance in terms of delivery of capital last year. Chairman, that concludes my overview and Becky's, so happy to take any comments, questions.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you. It's on the annual performance report under the Environment and Coastal Services. Obviously, the obvious issue is the recycling rates being quite low. We were under the understanding we'd be getting funding from government for the waste strategy, and obviously it's been delayed by a year already. What's the update on funding for that? Has the government come back to us and said, is there any funding available for that? And do we anticipate any further delays if there is no funding available?
Yeah, so on the basis the question is related to funding, we will take it. Obviously, this panel doesn't deal with waste and recycling within its remit, but as a specific query on funding, we are still waiting for further clarity exactly on how the government funding will take shape. We have received a little bit more clarity now that we will be receiving an income from the EPR scheme, which I'm trying to now think what EPR stands for. That's the Extended Producer Responsibility Scheme, thanks Kate, which is basically the tax levy on the packaging materials from the actual manufacturers themselves. So there will be some new income coming through to the council for that. But at the moment, it's not known how the top-up will work that will actually help us with our full transition to the new waste service.
Councillor Wade. Councillor Wade.
Thank you. Councillor Alex Wade, Hive Central. So my question is on the vacancies. Of those 18% roles that weren't filled first time, are these spread around the service? Are they particular departments that are being impacted? And what's, I suppose, the impact on BAU for the existing roles? And are there any particular reasons why we can't recruit first time? I do understand that I know in the food safety and health and safety team that's been a struggle, in particular recruiting people into that team, yet they're still doing an incredible job. And where does the 85% target come from? Is that from historical evidence of, obviously that's the target we meet to recruit first time. So I just want to get an understanding about why these vacancies aren't being filled and what's putting us off finding the right people.
Hi. So I think some really good work's been done, and in terms of the actual Q4 figure, I think we're now at 91%. So the annual report is showing an average across the year. So officers and HR support have worked really hard to try and look at how we use LinkedIn better, how we improve our recruitment application processes. I think the HR committee have had quite a lot of updates from Helena and Zoe on their work to also reach out. So, for example, I know that environmental health have been speaking at various universities to try and get that pipeline of people coming through. I think it's not in any particular service, and we do have issues escalated to us as a leadership team if there is particular issues in services that, and we're able to then use our HR policies to address that. We do have some flexibility around market forces, but generally I think we've seen this year get better. And we're now delivering above our target. yeah, so I'm quite pleased with where we are. I think it's always going to be a challenge for us and we need to keep working on it. We'll have to think about what the target is for the future as we sort of set the new corporate plan.
Councillor Halvery.
Yes, thank you. Alan Alvey from Forley. Can I just clarify, are we asking questions on the contents of the pack, even though it's...
Yes, I was waiting to the end and just say, that I think what we need to make sure that when we're talking here, that we stick to the items that are on the agenda and directly to it, and not deviate off into other areas.
Okay, that wasn't really...
That's where I'm going at the moment. Is I just want to lay down the line that we want to stick to the items that are on the agenda and not go off deviants into lots of different directions that are not on the agenda. So we need to stick to agenda items.
Okay.
Right, now to your comment.
Okay, well, my question is on items that are in the pack, if you like, so I assume they're on the agenda. And my first question is for the leaders' report, where we talk about the Waterside Steering Group has been re-established. Now, I'm not aware of that, and perhaps I could have some guidance on that point.
Re-established, it didn't finish as far as I'm concerned, it continued.
Okay, who is on the Waterside Steering Group then?
I don't know the list of names off the top of my head, but I can email them to you later.
Okay, if you would, I think.
No problem.
Please, thank you. Okay.
No other questions on that? In which case, thank you. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda then, please, which is the transformation... Sorry.
Yes, Chairman, if we could just put the recommendations. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, just to note the recommendations on page 5, which is, if I can get to it. The recommendations are that the annual performance report, that we note the annual performance report for the 2022-23, the revisional outturn of the general fund revenue and capital budget for 22-23, the provisional outturn of the housing revenue account and capital budgets for 22-23, and the year-end rephasing as included within the provisional outturn figures. Is that agreed? Noted. Noted? Good. Right, and now we can move on to item 6, which is the transformation programme update, and I believe that's Adam and Becky again.
Good morning, everybody. The purpose of this segment is just to provide an update on progress and the next steps for the transformation programme for the Council. Currently, we're in a design and planning phase for the programme as a whole, with core leadership being Alan as the Senior Responsible Officer, Becky as the Transformation Director, and myself as the Transformation Manager. For myself, for those that haven't met me before, I've got about 25 to 30 years experience delivering benefits-led transformation projects across various sectors, including central and local government. So to get on to where we are at the moment, sorry, I should say we will make the case for any additional resources we need as we get through the planning stage and we understand better the scope of what we're doing and the size of what it will entail. So against the backdrop that Alan has outlined previously, there are financial challenges that he set out. The Council has an agenda for change that is quite focused around more customer-centric services, which would target releasing at least £1 million worth of cost efficiencies, which will support the medium-term financial planning. The programme also needs to create the headroom that is required to address new challenges that are ahead, and that will figure as part of the priorities for the council as the corporate plan develops. To realise those benefits, the transformation is going to address a full spectrum of possible change and will focus on several building blocks, and they include customers, so we're ensuring we're focusing our services on customer needs and that we are drawing back on unloved or unneeded services. We are focusing on people, so we're thinking about the skills that the workforce needs, how they're structured, how they work, that kind of thing. We're thinking about the digital tooling, the applications and the way we do things so that staff can do their jobs better, but also so that we give opportunities to residents and businesses to engage in our services more easily if that's how they want to do it. We'll be thinking about accommodation and the best way to use the estate to deliver services and to work better. We'll be thinking about working in the right ways for maximum efficiency. And we'll be thinking about managing the sorts of activities we do so that we can foster a culture of sort of ongoing continuous improvement. With regard to where we are currently, there is further assessment ongoing around customer needs, and that's happening through focus groups that are happening as we speak, through street surveys, through questionnaires, at the various points of contact with customers. There's early delivery of a number of projects which will, in due course, no doubt be part of the programme, but they are early runners, so they need to be progressing right now, and we will sort of bring them into the programme as the programme becomes fully formed. And over the next few months, we're working on building the transformation strategy. We also plan over the next few months to engage in the next couple of months actually, to engage in full staff engagements. So in addition to the work we've done to understand the opportunities we have strategically to change, we want to understand that bottom-up understanding from staff of what we could and couldn't do and what might work and what they think are opportunities that we should be looking at. So just to draw a conclusion without going into the detail of the report, by the autumn we want to bring back to the Cabinet the transformation strategy, which will include details of a roadmap for the next 4 years, a detailed plan for how we are going to move through the next 12 months, the governance that we want to put around driving this forward, and the how we deliver these changes and achieve the objectives for the council and its plans. Okay, I'll hand it over to any questions if you have them.
Thank you. So basically, you're a hierarchy sort of overview of the whole of the council and how that is going to go forward and how we can perhaps improve the individual sections. So you're looking across the whole council, not just in one particular slot.
Yes,
so you will see and how that will interact with each other and how we can have a more efficient way of running things.
Yes.
Yep. Sorry, questions from Councillor Miller.
Good morning. I'm David Miller from New Forest, from Fordingbridge, Godshill and Hyde. I'd just like to commend you on the report and the scope of the project. I think it's really well put together and very clearly articulated. Having said that, one of the areas that slightly concerned me was when it comes to services that we provide in the community, possibly some of the areas where there is greatest efficiencies that could be gained might adversely affect some of the most vulnerable people within our neighbourhood. There is a line in 11.1 which says, refers to equality and diversity implications and says that the delivery of the transformation programme will give regard to equality impact, but there was nothing there which was stronger that said that no groups would be adversely impacted in the quest to reduce costs for the council overall. And I wondered if there was room to establish some principles around which the decisions would be made. And I wonder if you wouldn't mind commenting on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we have to be quite clear about the principles that will sit around the whole programme. So there will be, at the moment we are going through a stage of sort of verifying, because we've had a change of sort of mix of how the council's formed, but we have to understand what are the key to the pillars that we build around, and that would include those kinds of principles that say we don't make changes that necessarily impact certain groups, as you've just said, and I think that has to be built into the governance of how we move forward. But I don't think we have that set in stone yet, but that's what we need to do in the next couple of months as part of that transformation strategy.
Councillor Wade.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, just sort of a couple of points, because I appreciate it's an overview and you don't want us to it's not to get into the nitty-gritty at this stage, but it's just the phrase unloved and unneeded services. I suppose that's something that's going to be up for very much debate, and I'd hope would have a little bit more interrogation, because obviously whether you're looking at that term from the residents' point of view, and we've got a lot of vulnerable residents, rural residents, ageing population. I think, unless I'm much mistaken, the last year it's gone up about 2 or 3%, the average age of people who live in our district, and still, despite our much improved website, there are still people who categorically rely on in-person services in our area, which is always something, even in somewhere more built up in my area, where they rely on. So that's something just to hopefully to take into account as we move the process forward. And accessing to those harder to reach people has to be a priority in any review that we do. And where I am interested for us to explore, though, is looking at how the modern workforce works with more. Many people can probably do their job from home or hybrid working, and whether looking at our estates and where these people are working or how we can utilise these areas is, for me, I'd be fascinated to see how we can investigate sort of where we can make sort of cost savings in that capacity, where you're not impacting people, but you're looking at the actual estates as opposed to the people we need to run the services, as we've already previously discussed, and also not impacting the residents significantly, because as much as technology moves on, there is still a key proportion of all of our areas that categorically prefer in-person services, and that has to be sort of remembered when we go through this process. Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you. In the recent resident insight survey, many residents said they felt they weren't involved in the decisions the council were making. There is a danger that if we go about this transformation strategy without properly engaging with local residents, that we're just going to exacerbate the situation. Now, I know many residents in Leamington and Pennington, where I am, complain about not being able to access all the council services or being able to go in person to the council offices all the time. I worry that if we don't talk to residents, that's going to get worse. Do we have kind of a guarantee of some level of service, a minimum service provision perhaps, in each of the major towns and villages in the district? Do we have that? Or are we just focused on the cost saving?
Yeah, just to respond to that, and it also picks up on Councillor Wade's point. The phase we're in at the moment is that understand phase. So where are we now? So we want our decisions in the future to be evidence-based. So we're doing a fundamental piece of work at the moment to understand our customer needs, to understand customer experience. So Adam's already touched on the focus groups. So there, I've attended one, Ryan Stevens has attended one, we've had a couple online. We're just collating all that information at the moment that will help inform what the future direction looks like.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to pick up on this. I mean, on section 3.2, we say the research aims to understand why residents and businesses rely so heavily on traditional ways of dealing with NFDC. Well, in my experience recently, and also as a charity trustee, I think the problem is that IT now is more concerned about protecting itself rather than interacting with its users. The security, because of scams and everything else, I quite understand it, but the security that's been put in place for this IT means that human beings find it more and more frustrating to deal with it. And I think we must be careful that we don't end up with IT being the be-all and end-all, and the rest of us are just trying to keep up. I mean, frankly, I was involved as a charity trustee trying to make a bank transfer which required 2 signatures, which in the old days would have just taken 5 minutes, took 3 people 2 hours to do it. Ridiculous. So I hope we bear all this in mind when we're doing this transformation. Thank you very much.
As Becky says, we are in this looking at transforming stage. I fully understand the comments you've just said, Alan, and I know that Alan has experienced exactly the same problems trying to change our conservative banking details, and so far it's taken 3 weeks and we're still not there. So I do understand it, and I do fully take that on board.
We take cheques payable to New Forest Liberal Democrats.
Councillor Ward.
Just to add to this grievance, it's actually not us, it's actually Hampshire County Council, but I've been using the waste facilities regularly over the last few years, booking online. Suddenly I can't do it anymore, and I'm told the reason why is because I use a Mac. So, you know, crazy. So now I have to phone up every time I need to use them.
I think, I mean, you're going to be coming forward to the next meeting with recommendations and the strategy, and then we can see what you're going to bring for us and see what we can pick holes in at that point.
Pick holes in it, just.
Does anybody else have anything to say on this at the moment? No, I think that this is an exciting agenda item, and I think something we should be looking forward to. The recommendation, which is on page 27, is that the Overview Scrutiny Panel note the Transformation Programme update as contained in this report and provide feedback to the Cabinet. I think generally we support it. Yeah. Okay. We'll move on to item 7, which is development of a new operational services depot at Hardley Industrial Estate, which is Alan.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So yeah, pleased to bring this report forward. It's obviously the first time this new panel has seen this, although it's been on the Council's radar now for a little while. This report just brings together very much a joint project. So the estates team with Andrew have been working very closely with our senior officers in our waste and operations service, and colleagues within ICT, within HR. So a real collective. And from the Cabinet point of view, multiple Cabinet members and portfolio holders involved and engaged in this as well. Obviously, it's significant investment for the Council, so I'm just going to run us through the report in a fair bit of detail, because I think it's important that we just have a decent overview of what the scheme is here. So in terms of the background, how we've got to where we've got to, I mean, we know that we have adopted a new waste strategy. We're currently working from 3 operational depots. So we have the depot site Marsh Lane, Clay Meadow and Ringwood. Clay Meadow site particularly is the one that's been identified now for quite some time as being very small and essentially in the wrong location in terms of how it's surrounded by properties, a community centre, a train line. So there's no opportunity, no potential to improve or increase the size of that site. whereas Marsh Lane, Ringwood are still ideally located, suited, and so there's longevity in those sites. In order to help inform our opinion, we commissioned a specific report from a consultancy, Wood Group, who basically confirmed that, yes, the Hardley site, as we presented at that time, they felt would be the right answer in terms of an effective location to provide our Eastern Depot site. It's obviously not too far at the moment from the Clay Meadow site, and obviously we've got some potential fairly large developments within that area as well over the next 5 or so years. In terms of the case for change, well, the case for change is quite straightforward really in many ways, in terms of Clay Meadow is not going to see us through our new waste strategy and our new delivery of services. We've got a map there included at Appendix 1, which basically shows just the confines of the site. We are then looking at investing in this new modern operational services depot, so certainly providing more comfortable working environment for staff. It'll be much safer in terms of health and safety. It'll have much more bespoke and purpose-built vehicle workshop facilities. So, where we have around 200 vehicles in our fleet at the moment, we maintain those and service those in-house. So these facilities will be very much up to standard in terms of what we need to do there. And importantly, has the capacity for the expanded vehicle fleet, specifically as we look to roll out the new waste service, including obviously the separate food collection. So the detail in terms of what's included within the proposal is within section 5 of the report. I will say at this point, this is the reason we've had this as such a joint and collective project. This is very much about what the service needs and not necessarily what the service wants. So we've had some interesting conversations along the way, but we're making sure here we are providing the depot and the facilities that the service need to provide their services going forward. There's a full raft of what's included there through section 5. It's important to say as well that as part of this, obviously there's the future potential use of the Clay Meadow site. Obviously it's been identified as a potential site for residential development. So we have had an independent third-party RICS valuation already. So we've got a rough and approximate market value of the site. Obviously we'll work through that as part of next steps in terms of seeing through a capital receipt into the general fund. In terms of procurement process, as you'd expect, this has been run as a full open tender. It was actually a fairly long tender process in the end. We wanted to make sure that our prospective bidders had sufficient and suitable time to be able to prepare the detail that they needed. So we ran a procurement process actually over about 3 months in the end, and had a good level of engagement and input, and a interview panel and an evaluation panel that included some third-party support as well. And we are at the point now where we have a preferred bidder identified, still in the procurement process, so can't necessarily declare at the moment the details as to who that is or to what the exact price was, but that will be information that will be further borne out in a confidential appendices to the Cabinet when that comes forward. Obviously staff have been engaged throughout, so 93 roles currently based at Clay Meadow. We've had various staff engagement events that have been attended by both the senior management team from operations and from HR. And essentially we have been through this before. Relocation of staff isn't a completely new thing for us. Our most recent experience was around 45 staff moving from the town hall up to Appletree Court. So we've got HR policies in place to deal with the relevant requirements, if you like, in terms of recognising that there is a change for the staff. Now, within the financial implications, obviously this is a fairly large capital sum that's required. We did allow an indicative sum within the original capital programme when we set the budget back in February. So we have just under 6.8 million identified within the capital programme. In order to bring this project to fruition, including suitable contingency, we're looking at a sum overall of about 7.8 million. So it's just over £1 million in advance of what we've currently got allowed for within our capital programme. The original capital programme, however, didn't allow for that capital receipt necessarily from Clay Meadow. So that's our easy answer, if you like, in terms of dealing with the additionality that's required as a result of the tender exercise. The financing of the project in the main then, because it was largely embedded within the original capital programme, it was built into the capital strategy for the year. So the financing is all covered and all squared off. And as I say, with the exception of bringing in that capital receipt for Clay Meadow. Largely speaking, the revenue implication of the new depot will be fairly similar to the running of the current Clay Meadow, so no significant change in the revenue position, which is obviously positive. But what we will have is a more energy efficient site, so there are going to be opportunities there to actually reduce, say, electricity consumption, etc. And it's fair to say as well, the site will be very much future-proofed for future electrification, etc. There's a little bit more on that to come. In terms of key risks, obviously with any large construction project such as this, there are some key risks that we need to consider. A lot of that has been mitigated through the procurement exercise that we followed. We also have an in-house team who will continually monitor and regulate the project and the build as it goes through its varying stages. And we're also still engaged with a third-party consultative support. So they will, again, they'll help us through and support us through the whole procurement project. Obviously, material cost inflation is one there that is just worth dwelling on, because obviously we are still living in an era of high inflation. But again, that's been mitigated through a fixed price contract. So there won't be any significant variations there as a result of further inflationary problems. As I say, in terms of environmental implications, a bit like our recent Platinum Jubilee Business Park, we are going to target BREEAM Excellent in terms of that project, in terms of this project. We're going to be looking to support solar within the site and also future electrification. So, EV charging panels and points, not just for vehicles, but also for equipment. Because we're also looking now to utilise more electrification of, say, our lawnmowers and our grounds maintenance kit as well, going forward. Again, we cover the usual range of equality implications and data protection, etc. Again, nothing particularly coming out of here. If anything, in terms of equality diversity, you could argue that Clay Meadow is not exactly very suitable at the moment to provide a nice environment for our staff, whereas Hardley has very much been designed with that in mind. So it will be an improved offer, not only for our staff, but also for visitors of the site as well as necessary. In terms of governance, so we've got a couple of routes for governance here. So we've got our Waste Programme Board, which is an established board set up, which involves senior officers and members of the Cabinet. That will continue to oversee the project as a whole, in line with the other elements of the Waste Programme. We'll also have a separate and smaller steering group, again, to make sure that we're making decisions on a swift basis as and when they come through. So we are entering a design and build contract, so there are going to be elements of fairly sort of minor decision making that we don't necessarily want to always have to escalate through a formal Waste Programme Board. As I say, the Waste Programme Board then, just to confirm, has had overview of this project from the outset. There are those comments then within the report at section 15. Again, very supportive and would like to see the report go forward through to Cabinet. And the recommendation for the panel today is just to endorse or recognise the investment required of 7.8 million, and importantly provide any feedback that you'd like to see included within that Cabinet report as being part of the next stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor David.
Thank you, and thank you for a very in-depth report. I think it's a very good idea for the depot to move down to Hardley, I think it is. But I am a bit concerned about the future of the Clay Meadow site. Were discussions held with the housing team about developing that site for social housing? Because I think that particular area would suit social housing quite well. And if the site is to be sold off, how can we then guarantee there will be social housing on the site? Because if we're going to sell off a council asset, I think we need to make sure that there is some social good attached to that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair to say that our housing colleagues have been very interested from the outset. So although it's not explicit within this report, obviously we have to keep our options open. And ultimately, the general fund has to realise market value from the site. There can't be anything that's not an arm's length transaction, even if it is a sale to our own housing revenue account. And it's fair to say as well, as in terms of it being the potential for a residential development, obviously we'd look for it to be policy compliant in terms of the affordable housing need. Obviously it would be a nice outcome. I think we'd probably all agree if it exceeded the affordable housing policy position. But ultimately that will be borne out as part of next stages with Andrew engaging in conversations with our colleagues in housing first and foremost.
Councillor Alvin.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. First of all, I think I should say that as Chairman of the Parish Council that this is in, we are very supportive of the scheme. We're very pleased to see this going ahead. My question relates to the procurement process, where we say that the bids are being evaluated and scored on a 40-60 quality cost basis. Obviously the cost is clear because presumably a cost surveyor has checked the bids and all the rest of it, so the bids are comparable on a cost basis. But I'm interested in the quality side of it and how that has been evaluated, because presumably it could mean that we've not gone for the cheapest bidder. And what can you say on that, or is this a confidential matter?
No, it's not confidential. I mean, I personally haven't been involved in the evaluation panel, though Andrew has, so I'm sure Andrew may be able to comment in a little bit more detail in just a second. But as a general rule of thumb, I mean, typically with large contracts such as this one, a split of 40-60 is not uncommon, because obviously, like you say, you don't necessarily just want to default to the cheapest price, because unfortunately you are then going to potentially sacrifice quality. So in terms of allocating 40% to quality, and what we tend to do in exercises such as this, we make it absolutely clear from the outset how we're going to assess that quality. So in terms of when we ask bidders to submit their bids, it's on the basis of 4 or 5 or 6 key features, key areas that we expect to see, and we basically assign a percentage score to each of those areas. So Andrew, I don't know whether you can think off the top of your head what those quality assessment scores were for this one.
Well, I can't remember them sort of item by item, but what I would say is that the procurement process was thorough. Because of the extra time that was allowed to the process, we got strong bids, not just on price but on quality too, in terms of the overall project management, in terms of specification, delivery, environment and so forth. So I'm comfortable that the strongest bidder produced a strong bid, both in terms of the quality of their proposal and in terms of the price that was offered. So all of that work was supported not just internally but by our external technical advisors, who produced a thorough report supporting where we are. So, long story short, I think the process has been robust, both in terms of pricing and in terms of quality.
Can I just ask a follow-up on that? I mean, is that information going to be made public?
We don't tend to necessarily, although thinking about it, so the quality evaluation criteria would have been part of the open tender process. So let me check in with our procurement team, because that would have been basically publicly available at the point that the procurement opportunity was raised. So yeah, I'm sure it can be, but I'll double check with procurement as to exactly how the quality assessment was worked through.
Thank you.
I mean, obviously we always go for best value rather than the cheapest. And I would have thought that would come up from scrutiny and audit somewhere at some point. By auditors rather than not necessarily audit committee.
From my experience, it is made public, and I just wanted to be sure that in this case it would also be made public, because what is likely to happen is that we will not go with the cheapest bid, we will go with the best bid. So the question then becomes, how have you assessed the best bid? And that, I think, is open to public scrutiny. So.
Anybody else? No? Yes? Councillor Wade.
Industrial estate rather than the middle of houses and near local schools. So I do think it's a positive location. I just had a couple of questions. Really, firstly, bear in mind we're now at one end of the district as opposed to a more central location. Is there going to be an impact on the services that are quite unique to that area, or are we mixing them around? Because according to the report, cemetery, tree management and pest control and grounds maintenance is only Ringwood and Hardley, the two farthest ends of the district. If there's any issues on the A326, which obviously is a semi-regular occurrence, is there going to be an impact on services from having somewhere that has to go down that road and so far out from the rest of the district? And is there going to be an impact, bear in mind the journey is going to be longer than coming from a central location than Totton, on some of the services there? So that's just sort of one question. And are we looking at staff hours because of that? Because they might have to have longer periods of the day travelling versus actually doing the core work that we need them to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I mean, it's fairly operational. Unfortunately, Chris couldn't be with us for this meeting today. I'm sure he'd have done this more justice than me. But fair to say that they've done various modelling and various exercises. So in terms of the impact to frontline services, again, the staff and the team are absolutely confident that Hardley is going to make no difference whatsoever in terms of actually frontline service delivery. In fact, with the improved facilities and the future-proofing of the site, it's likely to lead to improved service delivery and certainly not a worse experience. In terms of the location of Hardley, so yeah, as you say, it's slightly further east than, say, Clay Meadow. However, again, the modelling they've done, there are some slightly longer journey times, as you'd expect. So obviously with the vehicles having to travel into central Totton from Hardley, but there are obviously journey times saved from travelling there to the other side to Forley. So it sort of swings and roundabouts a little bit in terms of that. And again, what they're going to look to do is obviously use the opportunity to completely fundamentally review all rounds in any case. So again, in terms of using new software, new technology, to basically take stock of the rounds and how they're currently worked through. And that, again, it gives itself a great opportunity to do it, not only as a result of the new waste service rollout, but also because of the location of the new depot.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I think an exciting project, and again, something to update the council looking forward rather than trying to stay as we are and trying to improve things. There is a recommendation, which is the panel request to consider the proposal and allocate 7.8 million of capital funding towards the new depot facility and give any feedback to the Cabinet, which I think is just our recommendation. That it should go ahead. Yes? Yeah. Agree?
Agree.
No. Okay. Item 8, which is Commercial and Residential Property Annual Report 2022-23. Andrew. Morning.
Good morning, Chairman, everybody. I'm Andrew Smith, and I'm the Estates Manager, the Service Manager for Estates and Valuation at the Council, responsible for delivering, amongst other things, 2 strategies which I'm reporting on today, the Commercial Investment Strategy and the Residential Property Investment Strategy. Within the update, I will first turn to the Commercial Property Report. Summarising for new members the aims and objectives of this strategy, dwelling on the income and finance and the overview of 22-23, and making no apology for special consideration of Platinum Jubilee Business Park. Then turning to the residential property company report for the year, which is Apple Tree Property Holdings Limited and its subsidiaries. Again, reminding members of the aims and objectives of that project, the returns, the financial dashboard, and the overview of the year. So, turning first to the commercial property investment strategy, just as a reminder for new members, or just generally, the purpose of this strategy, which was set up in 2017, was to acquire commercial property within the district. Two primary aims, mainly to secure economic development benefits and also to make a return on those investments. For those who will remember, the original strategy had a portfolio fund of £30 million, financed from internal cash and reserves. And in 2022, the end of the year, the Council approved a revised and updated strategy for commercial property investment, adding a further £20 million of availability to be financed from cash reserves and supplemental borrowing if required. In terms of governance, the strategy is overseen by what we call the Commercial Property Panel, which comprises the Chief Exec, Strategic Director for Corporate Resource, or CFO in my money, and also the Strategic Director for Housing, Communities and Governance, and the Portfolio Holder for Finance and Corporate, Jeremy, and Chairman of this panel. That CPP meets regularly to receive reports, provide governance and advice and oversight, and some decision making in respect of the assets that we wish to take forward to purchase under the scheme. And also giving a bit of an overview more broadly on the portfolio, which doesn't just comprise the assets acquired since 2017, but there's a selection of what I refer to as the old assets that we've held for many years. So in terms of the where, that's the present spread of our investments rather neatly around the district, from Starbucks up in the east and the various investments in Totton, round to the old investment at Hyde Marina and the industrial estate, the investments at Lymington and New Milton, including the site that we acquired from Bradbeers last year. And I think I got picked up on this, apologies, 15 Crow Lane, Ringwood is, of course, Platinum Jubilee Business Park. I think I just have so much assumed knowledge that I just assume everyone knows this. But when I talk about Platinum Jubilee, it's in Ringwood. It's next to the Linden development. So in terms of the spend under the 17 strategy, that's where we've got to. That's the investments last year higher because of the spend delivering Platinum Jubilee and also what we refer to as the Marks and Spencer site in New Milton. So you can see that I've pretty well, apologies everybody, but I've pretty well spent the money, and that's where we've got to now, just a shade under 30 million. In terms of the medium-term financial plan, I refer to this as the Bethune slide, but essentially we're delivering the income from the strategy against the targets set out in the plan, both in the past and going forward, which is, it always slightly confuses me that the minus sign on that slide, but I'm assured by the accountants that that's a good thing in the world of local government. So in terms of the investments, the pie chart on the left sets out the present balance sheet values of the purchases. The wedge on the right, headed by Town Hall, Hyde Marina, NFEC, which is the Enterprise Centre, and the industrial estate at Hardley, I characterise those as the old assets, if you like, the long-standing ones, and the remainder being the assets acquired through the 17 strategy, and the valuations are set out there. The operating income set out on the right, showing a pleasing increase year on year in terms of the income generated, and I would very much hope in the following year the income will be further boosted by the rental income from Platinum Jubilee, which we'll turn to in a minute. And you can see the red line shows the target set by Alan in respect of the strategy, and that we are ahead of the game. The same information really that we've just seen is set out on this chart in tabular form. The interesting thing on this really is the rates of return, the profit, if you will, the return on that the income is generating against the balance sheet values of those assets, sort of bobbing around 5.5%. And we've added, but one thing you see there, of course, we've got, as of this slide, which is presented at the end of March, of course we have no tenancies at Platinum, but we will do next year. So what did we do? So the main things were to acquire the site in New Milton, the Marks' site, which was a new tenancy from the new lease that Marks had entered into, and that was a newly refurbished unit which should provide an improved and more vibrant high street in that area, which is in accordance with council strategy. We also picked up a unit at Empress Park, which was a nice one, and a small unit, 1B Junction Road, Totton, which was acquired as part of a larger housing development project which secured 7 new residential flats in that building. And we worked together to make sure that as a council we could acquire that building primarily for the housing, but also for the commercial unit that came with it. And that unit is presently on the market for letting. To me, most important is Platinum Jubilee, which is the Ringwood development, a new business park of 7 buildings for light industrial use and 2 buildings for office use, Amiri being the main contractors, and delivered practical completion at the 27th of April, on or below budget. So just the usual wrangle at the end of the process as to the final accounts, which is ongoing. As of now, we have heads of terms signed for about 2/3 of the available space, and if those all come to fruition, that's £400,000 of annual rent. Since I typed that, the leases have now been completed in respect of six units, and a couple of weeks ago we were printing the leases as fast as we could to get them signed, showing that there is a market for these units. Those tenancy businesses include healthcare technology company, specialist lighting supplier, social media agency, swimming pool design company, and others. So there's a wide spread. This is quite important to us, that we achieve that the sites are different. The units are not all the same size. They're different sizes with a different offer to local tenants. Some good sustainability in terms of the PV, photovoltaic panels that were installed, generating 4K of electricity per unit, and EV charging provision for units as well, with 2 outlets per station. It often gets neglected, but I think it's very important that Amiri, they ran this site well. They maintain very high standards of health and safety, and clocked up over 71,000 safe hours of working, which is very good. So this is just to indulge me, but these are not artist's impressions. This is the site. The one top left is the office, bottom left some of the industrial units, an overview, a nice drone view of the site overall, and the office space within, I think that's block G. We also had we have a little slide on sustainability, showing the PV panels which are there and in some number. Cycle and waste stores, natural lighting to the business units, and the EV charging points. They're really there. So that concludes. I think the other point to make, actually, which I should perhaps have made, was that I'm quite pleased with the spread of businesses within the portfolio. We're not just concentrated on one thing. There's the different spread of businesses, both within the assets and within the tenants that take those spaces from us, both at Platinum and in Tottenham. So in terms of the residential side of life, so this is the residential property strategy run through a company called Apple Property Holdings Limited, whose aims and objectives is to operate as a commercial enterprise offering market rental properties within the district to folks with a local connection, with the marching orders to be a landlord of choice in this market, and with £10 million funding provided by the council through a mix of equity and loans, all the loans for which are secured by legal charges on the properties. Of the 10 million, shareholder has allowed 8 million from funding tranche. And to make the point, I think we all know this, but this is a general fund project. It is not a housing revenue account project. It's different. It's not a housing. It's not a housing. I'm saying the same thing twice, aren't I? In terms of the management, we look to secure modern lettable properties within the district, 2 and 3 bed houses in good condition and in high demand areas. We are careful with the tenants, making sure, credit checking them carefully in terms of affordability, with a preference for those with a local connection, offering initial tenancies of 7 to 12 months and then rolling from there. In terms of the governance, Appletree Holdings is a private limited company. Its sole shareholder is the council. It has 2 subsidiaries, the Lettings Company and the Residential Developments Company, which are in place. And the board of Holdings comprises 4 directors, 2 of whom are officers and 2 of whom are members, chair being, at the moment, being Councillor Davis. Board meetings held about every 3 months, and we consider the property manager's business update to the board. The AGM in October, including a presentation to the shareholder, and the annual accounts are prepared externally, of course. To be clear, the company has no employees in the strict sense. The property manager works within the estates team, and she is the day-to-day manager of this lettings business, supported by another member of staff, the property management officer. And those 2 folks report to me, as service manager, and then we all report through to the board. So in terms of the acquisitions, that's where we've got to. 16 in the portfolio to date, spend just a shade over £5 million. And steady state, if those assets run for a year, then that's the income that they would generate. And then in terms of the return to the council, the debt equity split is set out on that slide, returning back to the council through the legal charges. The sum there just shy of 200,000, and there's also a management fee that's charged in terms of charged to the company by the council shareholder, and generating a return of just over 4%. One key item that was requested that we look at from the board was void periods. Both a period on the left-hand table, which is the void or the empty period from the first acquisition of the property to its first letting, and the second being voids, more properly so called, the voids between lettings. On the left-hand side, it's fair to say last year was slightly suboptimal, but it's in respect of quite small numbers there, and we had 2 of those properties needed a fair bit of work doing to them, hence there was a bit of a delay in getting them back onto market. And secondly, property, in fact more than one, where we had applicants who coming forward, but who in effect we weren't able to take forward because we were concerned about their ability to afford these market rentals. So we make no apologies for being cautious with the tenants that we choose. On the other side of the ledger, though, on the re-lettings, we've done well in terms of reducing the void periods between lettings to 26 days, which is actually pretty good. And just a summary of what Appletree did last year. We acquired just the 4 properties, looking out everywhere in the district, showing there where the properties are located, and the 2 will be 2 and 3 bed properties that we look for. Because of interest rate changes and a lack of suitable properties in the market, and I think uncertainty as to where the market's going to go, we've got a bit of hesitation in terms of future purchases just for the moment. We're just going to just take 5 on this for the moment, but we do remain engaged with our local agents, looking for, and we're still on the hunt for suitable property. There's been a lack of suitable property, I would say, in the district too at the moment. So summarising both those strategies, the spend on the commercial property strategy is shown at just shy of 30 million as per the 2017 strategy, looking to deliver employment viability and vitality within the district, and the income yield tracking our expectations, delivery on Platinum Jubilee, and again, because of market uncertainty, we are just slightly on pause at the moment in terms of commercial acquisitions, but never say never. If there's something exceptional comes up, something very attractive, then we will look at it. And similarly for Appletree, which we've just described. Recommendation is for panel to note the performance to date in the delivery of the strategies, both commercial and residential, and to continue both of those strategies. And that concludes my presentation. Happy to take questions.
Thank you for that thorough presentation. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, yes, and thank you for the presentation. It was very in-depth, and I do just have one question. It was on the last slide. You said about commercial investments being on pause because of market uncertainty. Do you think that will have any impact on existing investments?
I've got no, slightly counterintuitively,
47 people waiting.
The demand for Platinum has been strong. We had a unit that came vacant in Totton, but that business moved to bigger premises. So they were expanding their business, and the unit that they had wasn't big enough anymore. So I'm not hearing from our tenants, cries of concern, and who knows what the future will bring, but that's where we are at the moment, and I'm certainly seeing good demand at Platinum for those units.
Councillor Alvin.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, my question was on the Appletree property holdings and the void periods. I was a bit more reassured from what you were saying, but it seemed to me they were quite high compared to what, as I understand, you would expect from a letting. I mean, checking, it seemed to me that about 3 weeks was the average you would look for per year. No? You disagree?
Well, there's two I have a debate with my property manager as to the use of the word void for the period between first acquisition to from acquisition to first tenant, because and they were quite small. We only had 4 properties, not a big number, and that's all about bringing the property up to scratch in terms of smartening it up, making it ready for letting, and I think I don't wish to blame bad luck really, but there were a couple of applicants who weren't really able to, we were able to take forward as it transpired, and we do consider the credit references and credit, the ability of potential tenants to afford these properties. So that's why there was a long gap. I would hope that would come down going forward. On the other, I mean, if I can deliver 3 weeks, believe me, I will. I think a delivery of 26 days for the voids properly so called, which is the void space between the one tenant leaving and another one starting, is a bit more measurable, and it is adjacent at least to your 3-week process. But that sounds very optimistic to me. Having said that, and I've just signed a tenancy agreement just the other day in terms of, so there was a churn, there was quite a churn last year. Hopefully it'll settle down a bit this year.
Just as a follow-on, I see that previously you said that you look at between 7 to 12 month letting periods. Is there a reason for that?
I think that's market standard. That's the tenants then can roll forward. You know, they just continue with their tenancies should they wish to. I think there's and if a tenant wants 12 months, then we might look at that. But we start at about 7, see how everyone gets on. That seems to be what is required at the moment.
Councillor Wade.
Yes, thank you. Really, really good presentation. Thank you, Andrew. You mentioned on one of the later slides that there's an estimation that will create 150 to 200 jobs at the Platinum Business Park. Am I to understand then these businesses are being brought from outside the district or outside the area to this? They're not moving from other areas in and around the district, because I suppose it would be more of a positive if they were coming in or from basically not in our towns and centres to using this site and enhancing the local economy.
I think there's a bit of both. There was an interesting business that's moved locally within Ringwood to the park. The market is not national, it's, I would say, more regionally basis, although there was a business come from South Wales, for example, to expand there. Difficult, I mean, it's difficult to say, you know, whether jobs created here means job loss elsewhere. All I would say is that there's an overall growth, and we'll see once it's fully let how many folks are working there.
Thank you. And just on the housing, you mentioned that there's 2 properties that we didn't go forward with with Appletree because of basically inability to meet sort of the rent agreement or at the time. Do we know sort of what the difference is between their expectations and what we were asking for, and is this something to look at moving forward?
Well, I think we are quite strict, and that if this is a market-based business, the rents are set at a market level. If folks, you know, once their finances have been assessed, aren't really able to manage it, then that gives you your answer. And we are cautious about that. We take our time in reviewing the financial information provided by applicants.
Councillor Harrow.
Thank you, Chairman. Just on the subject of whether it's a relocation or a new business moving into the area. Yes, we are always very keen to encourage new business into the forest and to improve the opportunities for people for employment within the area. But actually relocation can also preserve jobs, because sometimes what we're doing is we're offering a site that enables a company to either expand, we hope, that's the good news, when they're expanding, or maybe to contract and downsize slightly. But it is still keeping that business within the community, whereas actually if we don't have that mix of units and abilities, we could indeed lose them. So it's not just a case of getting new business in, it's also retaining the business that exists within the forest, and that's also a very important part of our strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions. Thank you very much for that report, Andrew. We've got a recommendation on that, which is the panel has to note performance to date and the delivery of the commercial and residential strategies and the continuation of both projects. Agree? Thank you. Okay. Item 9, ICT update.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning to you and all members attending today's panel. My name's Rich, and I'm here with my colleague Kim today as your joint lead officers for the ICT service, and we're going to give you a brief introduction today to ICT and some of the key items that we're working on right now. We will, of course, continue to report on these items as we continue in future panels. So in terms of the briefing today, Kim's going to give you an overview of the ICT service structure and setup and how we deliver that service. She'll be then be picking some highlights from the digital strategy that was approved in 2022, an update on some key operational areas, and then I'll be taking you through more on the delivery side in terms of our applications, projects and the work programme. Of course, happy to take any questions today and hopefully answering in real time, or we'll take them away and happy to come back to you. So I'll hand over to Kim to start us off.
Thank you, Rich. Morning all. I'm Kim Gray. I am the ICT Operations Manager, and this slide just goes through our high-level structure of the service. So we went through a service restructure a little over 6 months ago now, which sees the split into the two main areas. So I lead the operations side and Rich leads the data development and delivery side, and we both report into Rebecca Drummond. We're made up of 27 staff, and we have a management team supporting us and also line managing each of those individual teams. So I'll take you through the operations side. The service desk is our main point of contact for the organisation to communicate with us when they require any ICT support, and that team also supports me, ensuring that our service management is maintained through regular reporting of our performance. Our security and solutions team coordinate the organisation's response to cybersecurity, all things cybersecurity, and ensuring that we meet at minimum industry best practice. Our infrastructure team looks after the infrastructure environment, making sure that we have the underpinning hardware and network available for the organisation to run. And on the data development and delivery side, we have 2 applications teams, and they provide support and ongoing maintenance for all of our software and line of business applications. And we've got around 100 applications within our portfolio that we provide that support on. And finally, we have our business relationship manager. And this role looks after our project management team who deliver our major projects and our new solutions. And that role is also really important, supporting Rich and I managing and maintaining our key stakeholder engagements, contract management and supplier management. So this is just a recap of the digital strategy that we are working to. Our ethos is very much customer first, digital by design, and there are a few sort of reminders there of the key principles within that strategy. We do have the financial commitment of £625,000 per year for the 3 years, and as with all things, this strategy must continue to align with the transformation strategy and the upcoming corporate plan. This slide, I just wanted to give some highlights really of the key items within the operations team. So this is very much the business as usual stuff alongside some of the key projects that we're working on that the team are supporting. So within our service desk, we now have that enhanced reporting in place, and I'm really pleased to report that we are regularly meeting and perhaps exceeding our KPIs. And just to give you a flavour of a couple of those KPIs, in the last 3 months, we've reported that we've had a total of 730 incidents raised. 98.7% of those were resolved within their service level agreement, and our target is 95%, so we've definitely hit that one. We've also had 1,394 requests raised, and 99.2% of those were resolved within their service level agreement also, again 95% being that target. We're also halfway through reviewing our service management processes, making sure they're all fit for purpose and adopted fully within our teams. Infrastructure team and the security team are very heavily focused at the moment on a major project that Rich will touch on later, which is our Azure migration, where we're migrating our on-premise infrastructure to Microsoft Azure. The infrastructure team also monitor and maintain around 90 virtual servers, making sure they're all patched, updated and backed up, and managing and supporting over 600 laptop and desktop devices alongside 350 smartphones as well, so making sure they're all up to date and working as they should be. And an area that we are looking in that space on next is moving from Windows 10 to Windows 11, and we'll work with the delivery team on that later this year. In the security space, something that we need to ensure that we're coordinating on a daily basis is ensuring that we're doing all of the good things we say we are when we are reauthorising for our accreditations. And hopefully something that may address some earlier concerns is that a key piece of work that we're doing at the moment is updating our ICT security policy. So we are ensuring that it's balanced, it's got a much more balanced approach to ensure that it's aligned with the transformation strategy to allow us to transform, but also ensuring that we're meeting our security needs as well, alongside the information governance needs. So, as you can see, the operations team very much focus on maintaining the business as usual to support the ICT needs today, providing that really good, solid, stable foundation for Rich and his team to deliver the new solutions and bring through those new innovations that Rich is going to take you through now. So I'll hand you back over to Rich.
Thank you, Kim. So yeah, in my space, which is more focused on delivery, I'll start with the data element. And whilst we make use of data here at the council, there is more we can do in terms of modernising its presentation and using that to make more predictive decisions. So technically, recently we've been working with Microsoft and one of their partners to understand what a good data platform looks like and how we can make further use of data sets around the council. And that will lead into a formal data strategy. And we look forward to working with the new Performance and Insight Manager that was recently appointed to see how we can make better use of our data, and as well our information governance team, as Kim alluded to ensure that our data is safe and secure. In the development application space, the team are working hard to maintain around 100 applications, as Kim alluded to. Those of you who work with technology know that something new comes out 6 months later, it's out of date and it needs updating again, and we get those messages to say restart and update. So we have that ongoing for all our applications, so the team are constantly looking at what's coming out, what's coming up, and maintaining that roadmap of updates, and also looking into some new functionality and benefits that can be introduced for those larger upgrades. The applications team also heavily support new projects as technical leads, so as new projects and new systems come on board, that team need to learn that, configure it, and make sure it's all done to best practice. In the core delivery space, we do have a full work programme of projects, so there's lots of digital modernisation going on across the council in terms of our waste and operations area, in our planning, building control, environmental health. We're doing some corporate improvements as well, including a new learning management system to support our HR team, and a new corporate intranet based on SharePoint to replace the outdated looking ForestNet. Also want to pick up more on single sign-on, so those of you who use our HR iTrent system and can log in now, hopefully much easier with that single sign-on experience. We want to look to expand that out to further software. And also that we've got that moved to Microsoft Azure, so we can make use of Microsoft's industry-leading platform, including around security. We also have what's called a digital service improvement process, which is where services can propose digital change throughout the year. And once going through a review process, those often become projects that the team need to take on and support and deliver. So lots of good things happening there. And finally, Kim did mention the need to carry on progressing current tools. So yeah, we're looking at Windows 11 and Microsoft Defender as new antivirus. So it doesn't stop, so to speak, the new technology. I mentioned that it is a packed programme, so resourcing is important. So we have reintroduced some new reporting recently for projects to work alongside some established tools such as the project review group I run, project boards, and a technical design authority. So we do need to be realistic in terms of the capacity and resources that we've got, and we also need to maintain that quality. So what we do actually deliver is what the business needs and our residents need. So looking ahead, we always try to maintain that balance between delivering within the resources we've got, and we'll constantly be working with colleagues to make sure that prioritisation and resourcing is appropriate for our projects. This is a financial summary of the current work programme provided by our finance team. As you can see, the key projects are on there. It's relatively early in the financial year, so some of the spend will start coming through in due course. Typically, when we engage with suppliers, we try to do a milestone-based delivery, so we only pay when something is delivered, and that seems to work well for both the council and the parties delivering things. As we stand today, all projects are within the agreed limits. And just a note at the bottom of the table there, the new projects for this year are listed and have budget assigned. Some of those we're just waiting to align to the transformation strategy and make sure that everything is on course correctly. The final slide here is a summary of the delivery items that are in flight at the moment. Just to explain this slide, the grey colours are planned works. Green is in progress with no worries, so to speak. Amber, yellow is those in progress with medium risk, and red are those that are in progress with high risk. So, for example, the first project on there, the Azure Cloud Migration, is scheduled to finish in October. There's currently green is good and on track. I'll pick out the obvious red on the line, which is our regulatory services project, and that's introducing the IDOTS Cloud product into the planning, building control, PP and land charges area. It's fair to say this has been a challenging project with a challenging supplier. It's in a bit of a recovery mode at the moment. When I took post, I did want to complete a review of that project, which I did over a 3 to 4 week period. I then made some adjustments to that project, including around project management, governance, and how we interact with our supplier. And I'm pleased to say that some of those corrective actions are starting to make a positive difference. So the next couple of months for that project will be crucial, and there's still some work to be done. In terms of the intranet project, I flagged as amber purely based on scheduling, so there just was a slight delay there while I got some project management resources lined up. But I'm pleased to say we're re-energising over the next couple of weeks, including looking at a third party to come in and help us deliver that based on the SharePoint platform. We're also working closely with our colleagues in communications and HR on what that new intranet could look like. Another large project there is the operations project, and that's working with an experienced supplier called Bartek, who are going to be helping transform that area and bring some new functionality to things like garden waste. But largely, all projects are progressing as planned, as quickly as possible, and trying to maintain that good quality. I mentioned earlier the digital service improvement process, and just at the bottom of the slide there, those that have got DSI next to them are some of the examples of the new proposals that have come through from the business throughout the year so far, where ICT are assisting to either deliver those or assisting service areas to deliver them themselves. And yes, as I said, just to reiterate the point I made about resourcing, yeah, it's a constant challenge, so to speak, in trying to maintain realistic delivery and progress at the same time. So look forward to working with colleagues as we move forward to try and maintain that positive balance with everything. So that concludes our update today. I'm happy to take any questions from anybody. Thank you, Chairman.
The HPSN project, is that nearly completion, or has it completed? Or?
Thank you. It's pretty much completed, Chairman. We're just tying up some loose ends in terms of having a project closure meeting and just one final task. So that should be done over the next 2 to 3 weeks and be removed from that list.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. There's been a spate of high-profile data issues in the press relating to most of the pensions industry and some big names as well. I was surprised to learn that actually quite a lot of times when it comes to data security, the organisation only realises that there's been a breach when they're approached by the people who have stolen the data to actually ask for money, and that surprised me. Where are we in the level of kind of threat that is represented to us? How much of a target are we for that? Has that assessment been done? And then, in terms of defence, when was the last time we had some sort of trial security attack that was done on our systems?
Yeah, if I can just pick up the point about cybersecurity as a general risk. So actually it is highlighted as one of the Council's 7 strategic high risks. I think that's just in our nature of being a local authority. We are recognised that we are a potential target just because of the scale and perhaps nature of the data that we hold. So yeah, it's held within a risk on the Council's strategic risk register and is noted there. And in terms of your other points, I'm sure Rich, Kim, for some detail.
Absolutely. So yeah, we do. We get lots and lots of threats and we get lots of malicious attacks, and that's what our good security does. It protects us from that. So we've got our technical controls in terms of our firewalls and our other protections, and then that's why we've got some strict-ish admin controls as part of our security policy. So obviously that's when I mentioned that we obviously are going to need to have some of those controls in place, but we may be able to balance them a little bit better to ensure that we can allow the organisation to transform, but also not accepting any unnecessary risk at the same time.
And sorry, my second question was: have we had a test where people have tried like a control hack, that side of things?
Absolutely. So
yeah.
Every year, as part of our compliance and our reauthorisation to our accreditations, we do undertake external IT health checks. So that's where we'll have an accredited external supplier come in. They'll perform scans across our entire ICT estate. They will try and penetrate even further and do some certain things with our environment that they shouldn't be able to. But obviously it helps us highlight what those areas are, and we then have a remediation plan, quite a quick remediation plan to turn around any actions that are highlighted. But to sort of complement that, we do have that same tooling in-house as well, so that we do run that on a regular basis to ensure we know what we've got. So when we get to our external check, it's not new news. We know about it. We're working to it already.
That's great. Very reassuring. Thank you.
Councillor Alvin, your mic. Councillor Miller, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, my question relates to an item that came up at the last audit committee, which was a finding by the internal auditor of low compliance, or whatever the technical term is, on the logging of engineering works. We had a completion date of May 24, suggested, proposed. I mean, I don't see that on your programme. Is that correct, or am I not seeing it?
Thank you. I think that was the one with Steve Cook's area, yes. So it will be on the plan. So at the moment, I think I relayed at the audit committee, I'm just working with the team down there to understand their as-is, where they are, understand their processes, and then I'll work with them to build up a full sort of project proposal that will again go through the process where we'll look at resourcing and scheduling accordingly to try and meet that May 2024 deadline.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No. Just a little mundane thing. Whilst I've been sat here, numerous people have had to re-log in, try to refresh their screen, because the screens keep cutting out and logging off. Can the time be changed?
It's something we can certainly look at. Absolutely.
The bane of everybody here for the moment. Thank you very much for the report. And the just to note the contents. Lovely. Portfolios update. Who would like to go first? Jill, would you like? Okay. Sorry. They were in there, but the only ones that will be discussed today will be the two particular portfolio holders. Yes, Becky.
So the portfolio holder dashboards have been completed to Q4 22-23. We've not commenced the dashboard reporting for this year yet because we're focusing on development of the corporate plan, but we will still be monitoring those performance indicators in the background. So what we'll do is we'll bring back a report to the panel on the performance management framework for the September meeting, I'd suggest.
Okay. Councillor Cleary.
Everything's gone backwards. Is it supposed to? Oh, no, it hasn't. Is it?
Oh.
can stroll on. I mean, this meeting marks a key point, being able to reflect on the Council's performance in the past. As we now turn to the future and look at the Council at our priorities and plans for the future, I'm really proud of the highlights that have been reported to this committee. Just to take some key points from my leader's introduction, I mean, we've delivered the corporate priorities of the Council. Some of our key achievements were the agreement of the waste strategy, the climate action plan, the Solent Freeport approval. We have delivered implementation of benefits for our residents. We've put in place plans for the future, also worked hard with our partners to ensure we supported those struggling with a cost of living challenge. We've established 5 community hubs, delivered 22,000 community grants directly, as well as distributing government support for those. You can see the detail of this on page 16. And finally, but most importantly, with our new Chief Executive, Kate, we have seen progress in modernising our organisation with a new leadership team, wider staff engagement, which is crucial, and a pay review and a commitment, of which I strongly support, to become an employer of choice. And I believe this enables us to deliver the best possible services. That is my update.
Councillor Davis.
I'm just going back to your leaders' kind of portfolio achievements. You mentioned the county deal with discussions ongoing. Can we make representations that we don't want a regional mayor? Because government seem to be quite keen on saying you can have some devolved powers, but we're going to all centralise it with a mayor, which kind of takes away the whole point of devolving powers. So will we be making representations against that kind of imposition?
I will make strong recommendations against that. Believe me, devolution is one of those things that's taking many twists and turns. It says one thing 1 minute and another thing the next. So believe me, I will make strong representation.
Councillor Wade.
Yes. Obviously, I just checked the terms of reference panel just to check. I'm not asking a question not relevant to the panel, but as leader, one of the key responsibilities is the engagement with the entire NFDC district and with what the council does. I know it's not the best time of day, but no members of the public here, and we're talking about important issues. There were no members of the public at the panel last night. And I think we need to do more as a council to engage our entire communities more, to attend our meetings, involve in the democratic process, challenge us at public participation, and also to look at the faces of this council. With the greatest respect, 17.5% are women. That's not really good enough. And we really need to probably repeat what we've done before and have more engagement with local schools and colleges and the community to try and engage what we do, the good, the bad, and also trying to arguably look for the councillors of the future. Because at 38, I shouldn't be one of the youngest. And I do think we need to do more to sort of engage us because, we're all elected here by about 30-35%, and it's not really good enough. And I want more people to see what we do and engage with us, whether it's challenging us and holding us to account. But I do think as a council, we need to do more on that.
Couldn't agree more. And I would love to see more women employed. I would like to see more women become councillors, because I think there's now only 5 of us. Is it 8? Okay. So it's still an exceedingly low number, but given the pressures on family life, most having to have 2 or 3 incomes to afford mortgages, to afford the cost of living, I can understand where women say, okay, the man in a tradition, go to work, I'll stay at home and look after the children, because we see that as our role. But I would really like to see more women come forward. I couldn't support that further.
Thank you. No other questions? No. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
Oh, sorry.
No.
I was just pointing the screens
Oh, you're pointing at the screen, not the question. No, sorry, Councillor Herron.
We all right? Ready, good to go? Excellent, wonderful. Thank you, Chairman. As you can see this morning, most of my portfolio has been already mentioned and pretty much dissected across the reports that have come through. I would like to start off, first of all, from Councillor Miller's comment early on in the proceedings about the impact on the most vulnerable in our community. I think that this council has time and time again shown what is the very reason for our existence and at the heart of everything we do. And we do appreciate that there are certain decisions that we have to make that have different impacts on different areas within the community, and that we work hard to resolve them where those present real difficulties to people, and that is always important. We have, in the previous administration, and I will repeat it again in this new administration, always said that whilst the digital transformation is the most cost-effective method for people to contact this council, and we always have to have an eye on the budget, but whilst it is, we will, under this administration, never be at a point where if somebody needs to see us, they cannot actually have a face-to-face meeting or a telephone conversation. We commit ourselves to that because, as you say, it is very often the most vulnerable that are in need of that sort of support. We've been through a lot. I mean, our financial budget as we go forward, we are in a reasonably good position compared to an awful lot of other councils up and down the country. I'm far happier with our budget than Hampshire County Council are with theirs, so I'm pleased to say that. But we are constantly receiving increased and new pressures, such as the government's new look at how waste will be dealt with. Again, we must support that to a certain extent. You know, we are all committed to a greener and more sustainable way of living, but it comes at an economic cost. And what we have to do is balance that cost against the service delivery and make sure that we do the best we can, but within the financial capabilities of this council. The move to Hardley will greatly enhance that, but that is a significant capital investment. That capital investment is needed for a number of reasons: to move out of an area that's no longer suitable, but also to accommodate the change in waste. We are going to see considerably more waste streams coming online. We're still not entirely certain how many of those, because the government aren't providing that certainty to us, but we need to build a waste facility that is capable of dealing with whatever comes forward. So that is one of the things. Our ICT programme, nearly 30 projects, if you read down that list, 30 projects going forward. That is an awful lot of resource. Now that is delivering better services, more financially supported services, but the level of that compared to when I joined this council, and I joined it at a younger age than you, but unfortunately eventually you get to the point where an old fogey sat here. But when I did it, you know, email and a little bit of access to the internet was about it. We'd done everything. ICT tick, I think it was 4 people in a broom cupboard. So, you know, the scale of what we're doing, but that actually delivers real savings to us, but it also delivers real challenges. And one of our greatest risks whenever ICT is challenged from an outside source is through the weakest point. That is what they're looking for. And the weakest point is very often the people sat in front of the keyboards. So bear that in mind, members, because indeed you have access onto the system. ICT try and keep us in a little corner because they don't trust us, quite rightly. But we are actually a weak point. So whenever you see the new training coming up, and do please follow it through, do please look at maintaining it. Again, your screen cutout, I know it's really annoying. Mine has just done so, so I'm doing this ad-libbing, but we won't worry about anything like that. But again, that's very essential, because if anyone leaves their computer and it's live, obviously it does create a risk. So ICT quite widely say, you know, no movement, no activity, let's shut it down and keep us safe. A little annoying in this environment where we're using it more as a screen to read from than something that we're working on. I think on account of the fact I'm looking at a blank screen, I shall probably stop at that point. And anyway, Councillor Davies wants to ask me a question. Oh, one other thing on the dashboard. You will appreciate, obviously, that the portfolios have been realigned as a reduction in the number of portfolio holders. So there's a deal of work behind the scenes going on in those, realigning our dashboards to our portfolios. But it will come back because I personally love mine. So
I was actually going to say, yeah, I imagine it is. It's all a bit of transition at the moment. I ask this question every time. Local government finance. Has the government mentioned anything about a further review?
They are schizophrenic in that they do. In as far as very often a good soundbite comes out, but it's not followed forward within the legislation. We were absolutely assured that when we got our last tranche of finance, it would be a 2-year settlement. They still vaguely mutter about it being a 2-year settlement, but absolutely nothing in writing confirms that that is set in stone. So we don't accept it as such. We have to accept the fact that, once again, we got a single-year settlement. I would love to see a level of certainty. Equally, there is a talk, as you know, as I say, I've already mentioned it, the change in waste collection. And there is the discussion of new burden finance for that. But again, it's not tied down. We are already having to make decisions to be in a place to implement with a timescale, because you know what the government are like. They will talk about it and in vague things, and then they will hard and fast chuck it down with a timescale that they could never meet and hand that to all the councils. Obviously, again, we're working with Hampshire on that, and there's no point in collecting great big levels of waste in different streams, and that does have an impact on the environment as we have more vehicles going around the district collecting different waste streams. But there's no point in doing that if their superMRF hasn't yet come on stream and they haven't got an outlet for the products that we're collecting. And again, this is a very important part of the waste strategy, and we are working with our partners, Hampshire, because obviously we are the collection, they are the disposal authority, and we have met with them about this, because it is very important that we're not just collecting those waste streams so we can tick a box. Those waste streams, having been collected, actually have to have a viable source to go to be dealt with and to return the greener impact on the environment.
Thank you very much for that response. I always love hearing you talk.
Councillor Wade.
Thank you. It's sort of what you led on to, waste, it sort of leads on to sort of my question to you. I would add, though, that you've been a portfolio holder in my 9 years on here, and I can't imagine how many different local government ministers we've had to go back and forth about local government funding in that time. It's extraordinary, and I imagine very frustrating. You mentioned, obviously, the county council's budget. Are we, as a council and as you as a cabinet, commenting on their budget review? Because there's some very startling suggestions and proposals in there that will impact our residents and indeed this council, even reference to the risk of recycling centres that is put in there in one of the proposals, which obviously impacts our waste and recycling strategy, I imagine, to an extent. And in your position, obviously, with involving in the finance side, are you looking at that and commenting on behalf of the council? How is that done? And my second question is, are we therefore looking at opportunities of partnership working with county and parish and town councils over areas like open spaces, grass cutting, and is there an opportunity there for moving forward for us to, and even on areas like customer services, arguably for a financial benefit as well?
The council has not chosen to formally comment within the consultation on the budget set proposals that the council will bring in. We are indeed in discussion with them on a number of separate areas, specific, especially those that impact heavily either on the council as a council or our residents as such. Obviously, some people are very upset about dual hatting, and they sometimes, over the times that I've been on the council, there's people saying, you know, it's a good idea, it's better. I like the fact that we have dual hatting, because I think that it's very important that actually a number of our county councillors also sit on this council, and they get the feedback that comes from the debates that we're having like now, and they're able to take those and feed them back into Hampshire County Council. So, yes, we are discussing specific areas. We are not submitting a single comment on the whole of their budget as they put out for a consultation that I'm aware of. If Kate is going to disagree with me, she's welcome to, because she knows far more about it than me.
I was going to say, if I can just comment on there, so as a senior leadership team, the executive management team, we are taking stock at the moment of what was included within the consultation document. It's not been that uncommon for us to submit a consultation return back, but it tends to be more in a format that's more conducive in terms of them being a local authority partner as opposed to the technical consultation response. So we are likely to be working on something.
Thank you very much. No further questions. In which case we'll move on to item 11 and 12, which is Council Tax Adjustment Scheme Task of Finish Group and Financial Strategy Task of Finish Group. So I just want to know, can we agree that we will get that to go out and let the officers request that and get members together for that, those two committees? Yeah. Great, thank you. We'll move on then to the work programme which you've got. As we've had an example this morning, basically there's too much on the agenda to be able to go into any great details of particular subjects. So what we would like to do is reduce the amount of agenda items on each meeting that we have in the future. Yeah?
Chairman, just to sort of add a bit to that, for those members that attended the overview and scrutiny training a couple of weeks ago, it was suggested that the panel's time be prioritised in a slightly better way, and try and have fewer agenda items so that the panel could focus on perhaps 2 or 3 items wherever possible, and just make better use of its time, and make other information items available in a different way, and they'd be sent to members or made available on the councillor's area, and any issues arising out of those could be brought forward to a future meeting. We work with the chairman to make that happen, but that's what we would try to do. If there's a lot of items coming forward to a particular meeting, we will try and take some items, use them in a different way, and make best use of the panel's time, Chairman. We'll just work towards that gradually. Thank you.
I mean, things like just information could just come out to the committee members as email, and if they have any questions that can be brought up from that point, rather than having to have a whole section on that. Okay, I agree on that. I've got no urgent items, so I will declare this meeting closed. Thank you very much for attending.